Salam Sejahtera and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zaha Manso, and I'm a PCOM counselor, and I'll be moderating this session. So, a bit of background about this whole program. The Cyber Defense and Security Exhibition and Conference, or CIDES 2021, is a showcase of advanced solutions and technologies to address cyber defense and cybersecurity challenges for the public and the private sectors. And the event will be made of various programs and activities, including the Malaysian Cybersecurity Strategy Forum, or MCSS. MCSS comprises of panel sessions that discusses various cybersecurity issues faced by users as well as organizations. And during these sessions, experts get to share their experiences and knowledge in managing cybersecurity in their respective fields, right? So welcome to this track, or track 1, entitled Zero Trust for Robust Security Posture. Now, a bit of background. If I think about myself when I was younger, right, and most of you were not born yet at that point of time, in the old days, really, the people using the internet was just researchers and academicians and so on, right? And we kind of trust each other. So essentially what we had was everyone is on that internet, we trust each other. So that was a full trust architecture. That means we don't think someone will do bad things, right? And that worked for quite a few years, right? If people who are that old and remember those good days where you didn't have all these, viruses and cyber attacks and so on, until about 1988, when the first worm was created, and that caused a havoc, right? And apparently this guy was just proving, he's a smart guy. And when that happened, then another guy then developed the first firewall ever, right? And since then, people came to this next phase of, which is we call partial trust, where people who are behind the firewall, behind all these protections, are actually trusted, while people outside the firewall, outside all these protections, are untrusted. So that's known as a partial trust model, right? And for 3 decades, right, 30 years, things have not changed. People are still relying on, the firewalls, the intrusion detection systems, all the nice things that you put in place to protect the network perimeter, right? But I think in the last couple of years, with this digital transformation happening, with digital technologies becoming more pervasive, there are a couple of challenges that I think all of us face today. I think the first thing is that people are starting to punch holes against this wall, right? So it's not only the web ports are open, but now you have all kind of apps coming in, and people are working remotely, blah, blah, blah. So you have to open up all sorts of ports, and that becomes a challenge in terms of protecting this, perimeter. And secondly is that, with the cloud, the core systems are no longer in your network. They're outside your network, and you have to deal with that, right? And finally, the reality of life, as people get more dependent on the internet with this, in this digital world, because everything's internet enabled. The reason why it's democratizing technology is the internet, right? So everyone's connected to the internet. It creates a lot of opportunities for these bad guys, the cyber actors, right? These threat actors, right, so to speak. To the extent that even countries are now at risk. Some countries are having, thousands of the smartest brains, smartest engineers coming up with the best way to attack other countries, right? And unfortunately, when this kind of technologies get to the wrong hands, the wrong hands, it is just like giving an atom bomb to all of us, right? We can actually use the same powerful ways of attacking others, and that makes cybersecurity a lot more challenging these days, right? And to the extent that in today's world, we have to assume breach, right? We have to assume that today bad guys are already in our network for at least 99 days, right? On average of 99 days. Just imagine a bad guy is in your house for 99 days. Just imagine what they can do, all right? So this assume breach approach and the challenges and all these realities that we see today this new concept of zero trust, this new model of zero trust came out. So rather than me trying to explain all you, I'll get the experts to explain this. So the first panelist. So without further ado, let me introduce the first panelist, and I will give the questions following that. The first panelist is Mr. Wong Ching Peng, or CP. I'll just call him CP, if you don't mind, CP.
Yes.
And he's the Senior Business Development for Southeast Asia and Hong Kong for FORTINET, right? And CP champions FORTINET's SD-WAN and security fabric solutions in Southeast Asia and Hong Kong markets. His passion as a technology evangelist is to advocate and shift adopting a holistic fabric approach to network security. So CP, let me ask you this, right? I mean, maybe if you can spend 1 or 2 minutes explaining what is zero trust, right? In the simple terms, so that the audience understand how is it different from a traditional model, and maybe how can it help in terms of enhancing internet or cybersecurity, the cybersecurity era, cybersecurity today. Go ahead, please.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Zaha, and good afternoon, right, to my fellow panelists and audience as well. Actually, Dr. Zaha, you've nailed it just now, when you said that zero trust is about assuming that your network, your infrastructure is already being breached. That's the whole premise of zero trust itself, right? But the other thing that you mentioned is also about where the network is. You're talking about cloud and all this. And seriously, this is really what complicates things. Like you mentioned, in earlier days, you're talking about a mode concept. Whatever is inside the network, yeah, we think is trusted. Whatever is outside is untrusted. But today, first we're going to think of where is the network. It's inside, outside. It's everywhere, right? Wherever your users are, then are the users to be trusted. So we've been talking a lot about users and all that. I think maybe in a layman term, maybe we can call it, right? I like to always tell people, no, zero trust, really from a legal point of view, you can think of it as, guilty until proven innocent, right? Kind of the other way around, yeah. So from a user point of view, how sure are we that you are you, right? So that's the first thing. We need to identify who the user is. Are you really the user? It's about authentication, and today more and more about multi-factor authentication. And especially, we've seen it last year, right? Due to the COVID situation, right? More and more people are adopting remote work and all that. When previously, maybe the risks are lower because less than 30% of the workforce has remote access, so single factor. But as the number of people grow, technology is there, you need authentication, but then the thought starts to come in that the risk level may have increased because of the sheer numbers. That's number one. And the other thing I feel is because of all levels of people that's coming in, right? So multi-factor authentication comes to the forefront. So that's one. The other thing that you mentioned also is about devices, right? So devices is no longer about this device, right? It's also about the IoTs, right? I like to say, IP phones, IP cameras, but actually there is also the fridge, the TVs. Somebody even told me, what was that? A vacuum cleaner with Wi-Fi. Yes, correct. Yeah. So you get all sorts of things. Then, so users, you think you can take care, but then how about devices? Are you sure the devices are safe? And especially, we're talking about managed services and all that. Right? Even printers, you're allowing the service provider to access your printer within your office itself, right? So we need to be able to then secure the device accessing your network. So good old, guess what? Good old network access, right, on the devices comes in, and that's another key thing they want to look at. Third is then, I like your analogy. If somebody's already in your house, right? So how do you protect your stuff? Okay, maybe I have a safe, right? So not so valuable things outside, yeah, you can take what you want. Valuable stuff in the safe. You need another key to go in. That's a little bit about dynamic access control, right? Depending on who you are, you get to access to whichever things. Again, this will come back to who you are, the user authentication, and the device itself, right? Maybe BYOD, no, you can't access. Only with a company asset you can access. And access to what we are talking about? Initially, we are talking about accessing to a certain segment of the network, right? Or certain servers, maybe even. But now we are going another step with zero trust is to accessing applications itself. And applications itself will be even more granular in that sense, right? Role-based. If you can access a certain application because of your job role, that's great. And back to where are you going to host your applications, right? Is it in on-prem, right? That's your in-house applications, or are you using a SaaS, right? In a public cloud. So the whole thing has to be taken from a more holistic level when we talk about applications in-house, in IaaS, public cloud, in a SaaS mode, right? So all this dynamic control has to come in. And lastly, well, you trust me now. 1 minute later, will you still trust me, right? We don't know, especially when you have devices with USB ports enabled and all that, right? You never know, or somebody will be downloading something. So this continuous posture check always has to come in, and so zero trust itself. If you think of what I've been saying, right? I'm talking about authentication. I'm talking about network access, access control, security posture check. If we look at, say, 10 years ago, right? I think these have all along been around, right? But zero trust puts it into a framework. I think it helps IT organizations, it helps CISOs put all this into perspective, right? And understand that there are risks involved. If you say that IT is supposed to propel the business and supposed to help you, right? From a business productivity point of view, then we shouldn't let well, there will always be risks. It's just like crossing the road, there's a risk, but you need to cross it. So we put zero trust there, let people understand what they need to do, assess your assess your risk level, and then implement the various solutions.
Thank you very much, CP. A really nice way for you to frame what zero trust is, right? So let's now hear from Mr. Abbas Kudrati. He's the Asia Pacific Chief Cybersecurity Officer for Microsoft. Bit of a mouthful. Abbas has been a long-term cybersecurity practitioner, has been on the ground, and a CISO. And at Microsoft, he's the Asia lead for cybersecurity, or a cybersecurity advisor for security solutions area. Now, in addition to his work at Microsoft, he also serves at a couple of universities. One of them where I used to work, by the way, High Trust, which is La Trobe University in Melbourne, High Trust Asia, EC Council Asia, and several security and technology startups. Yeah, he supports the broader security community through his work with ICASA, and he's authored a book, by the way, Threat Hunting in a Multi-Cloud Environment. So if you want to buy one, you can get him to sign also. Yeah. So Abbas, over to you. Maybe explain what you see. What's your definition of zero trust in simple terms, and maybe how is it different from the traditional model, and maybe explain a bit. How does it help in this modern era? Over to you.
Yep. Thanks, Dr. Zahar. So you and CP Wong has nicely covered in terms of the definition of zero trust, but going back one step again, I like to also start my journey when I used to be a system administrator. The network used to be flat, and we used to have a TCP/IP based network where you are connected first, and then you authenticate to get access to any resources. But now we have flipped that particular approach. You have to authenticate and authorize first, then you get connected. If I go back again, a layman language, if I call it, we all are practicing zero trust in our normal physical world. So today, CP Wong, if you're going to office, I'm sure you have an access card, right? And your office is in one of the big building. To get into the office, you have to first show it to the security guy. He will let you get in because you have the card. But then you need to, if you go to the elevator, you have to show your card, and then only you can enter the floor where you want to go. So first level of authentication. Then you go to your office. There are certain rooms of CEO or a data server room which you can't access it because your card will not be valid. Although you can access the building, you can access the floor as well. So, so we are practicing that you are being asked to authorize and authenticate at every stage of your journey from your car park to your own desk. Same concept is now applied into a cyber world where we are constantly authenticating and authorizing every signal, and we call it for earning for trusting someone. We say you have to earn the trust. It's not been given. And how do you earn it? By constantly verifying and authenticating every signal which comes into my network, signals from my identity, signals from my device, signal from my location, and all these things are analyzed as a part of a risk posture, which CP Wong again talked about, risk-based approach. If those signals are healthy, then I will allow you to give that access. If, then else. That's my definition of zero trust, Dr. Zahar.
Thank you very much, Abbas. I like the way you explain it. It's true, right? In the physical world, we are constantly challenged especially when you have to change the privilege of accessing a new room, for example, right, and so on and so forth. So that was a very nice description that I think people can understand. So maybe from a more academic angle, right, we have Dr. Saaidal Razalli bin Azzuhri. So Dr. Saaidal, he is a senior lecturer in the Department of Computer Science and Technology in the Faculty of Computer Science and Information Technology in University of Malaya. And University of Malaya is one of the Malaysia's top university at this point of time. Now, he completed his PhD in Queensland, Australia, and specialized on wireless ad hoc routing protocol. And his area of expertise are wireless networks, mobile ad hoc networks, autonomous systems, fiber laser, fiber sensor, blockchain, all of this interesting stuff. And I wish I could go back to university again and do research. So again, maybe from your point, from an academic point of view, maybe explain what zero trust is in simple terms, and then how's it different to the traditional models, maybe, and how can it help people out there in the real world, and maybe where things are going from a research perspective. Over to you, Dr. Saaidal.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Zahar and Mrs. CP Wong and Abbas Kudrati. Okay, if you talk about academic always have like bombastic technical terms about this zero trust, but I try to make it as simple as possible. Okay, so as you can see, like there are many definitions for the zero trust actually, but I think it is more accurate to say that it is strategy in security design approach. Okay, not necessarily something that you buy. The main idea is to change the thinking from fixed perimeter environment, like those from outside organization and those from inside organization, to the current reality of perimeterless, meaning that doesn't matter whether you are inside or outside the organization, we cannot trust you. Okay. One thing for sure, zero trust has no concept of friends. What else? Best friends forever, BFF. So there's no concept. It's prohibited. Okay. We need to change the mind of trusting anyone or anything once it was verified. This is the traditional way of security environment. To trust of nothing. I mean, you have in order to access, we have to verify at every approval access. Like you have a cards and stuff, you want to enter the main room, then you want to enter another room, you have to access another one. You may not have the access to other like server room or maybe like a HR room or something like that. But we cannot take the zero access terms literally. It doesn't mean that you are not trusting your users. You have to trust your users. I mean, trust the users in order for you to grant them an access. But it lies on assumptions on why you are trusting them. So why are you trusting them? Okay, coming to the higher education or universities, college. Okay, like Mr. Abbas Kudrati and CP Wong, you have an access card for everything. For university environment, it's like open concept. We cannot like restrict people to come in. Okay, we are welcoming them to see the university environment, but at the same time, we want to control. I mean, we have all this. We not just have a student and lecturers. I mean, academic staff or others, admin staff. We also have like adjunct professor, visiting prof, student exchange. What else? Those students from other universities doing scientific experiment here, and then we share all the data together, and then we cannot like so this kind of environment we already like we living in a zero trust in the university environment. So what is important, Mr. CP Wong said the MFA multi-factor authentication, of course the identity management, because there are so many privilege level, user level. So universities or higher education sector must be very creative where they able to where they want to control, or how do they control that. So this is the difference between the the industrial side and the university side. Even university, if you go, of course in university in Malaysia they have all these wall and gates and stuff, but you go to overseas like UK and Australia, they doesn't have gates, everything, so everything's open. So this is like, it's open but we cannot trust you, something like that, if you get my drift. Okay, thank you very
Very
much.
nice.
That's
Thank
all
you
from
very
me.
much, Dr. Saaidal. Now, one thing which I noticed that everyone is saying is that you have to authenticate every time you access different kind of things, right? And we hate to type in passwords, right? How do you make it simple for people as we move into the zero trust era, right? I mean, you don't want to have a situation where everyone's got to type in their passwords every time. How do you deal with this complexity in the sense that you are continuously required to actually authenticate? Anyone wants to take that? Maybe we can start with Abbas first.
Okay, I'll go then.
Sorry, Abbas,
So,
in the spot.
yeah. So, see, zero trust, as Dr. Saaidal and CP Wong also mentioned, it's about the architecture design, and it's also a mindset where you are constantly verifying. So that doesn't mean that every time if you're working from home and you're trying to connect your SharePoint online or an Exchange online or an MS Office online, whatever, you have to re-enter your username and password. No, that's not the objective. The way the technology works behind the scene, there are two ways to implement that policy authentication mechanism. One is you buy a certain hardware box or a certain engine, which is a predefined with certain policy, and once the policies are met, if then else, you get it approved. Other way to do it is a customized policy engine, wherein, for example, Microsoft Azure AD, which is called conditional access. Only if the condition change, then you go and ask that person or a device or identity to increase their assurance factor. If I can give you one good example is, suppose we all are in Malaysia today doing this particular session, but all of a sudden, if my identity is prompted from Australia, you can say Abbas is is always in Australia. How can we all of a sudden he came from Malaysia? That means there is a change in my profile. Then my system, my conditional access engine or my policy engine will ask for an extra assurance, saying that since you always work from Australia, but now your identity is popped up in Malaysia, you have to second factor authenticate yourself. Then only you get authorized. But these things happens very quickly within milliseconds, based on the risk profile engine what is that. If the profile changes, then you ask for second factor. Otherwise, they keep profiling yourself and you continue to work together. It doesn't matter if you're working from home continuously from the same Wi-Fi network of your home, using the same device which your company has given you and the same identity which you already have it. Unless the profile of identity or the device or the location change, then you increase the authentication or assurance factor. Yeah, you're on mute, Dr. Zahar.
Yeah, I had my grandson, crying in the background, so that's why I went mute. Anyway, no, CP, I was just wondering whether you want to add anything, something different from what Abbas has said. He talked about hardware, he talked about conditional access. Maybe
Yeah.
you have others that
I think what Abbas mentioned is very much the concept behind it. Depending on how we name it, I think end of the day, this thing we call single sign-on is the I would say the concept behind it, right? End of the day, it's to make user experience positive as well, right? I think the example that authentication fatigue maybe, and guess what? The next thing people will be thinking of is how to simplify your password. Of course, we are talking about having rules and all that, right? But humans are very clever, right? We'll find ways to go around it. But yes, so I think single sign-on would be something that we've seen many organizations implement it as well. So maybe over a period of time you sign on and then you get access. But if you're off for too long, you're off. Right. Again, comes back to this zero trust thing, right? Right. If I have it, especially if I'm in a cafe and I'm being negligent, right? So I left my desk, I went to buy a drink, and my laptop is not locked. So somebody can use it as well, right? So there is always this balance between usability and security, but very much what Abbas mentioned. Yeah.
Thank you. So Dr. Saaidal, I have a question for you. From your perspective, right, being in a university, do you see, and you talked about just now that zero trust is about a strategy, right? It's a mindset, it's a strategy that. So as you all know, mindset is the hardest to change, right? So how do you see that, at least in Malaysia, do you see that organizations are changing their mindsets here? I mean, when you think about for example, right? Do you think they're going in this direction, for example? How do you see in terms of the maturity? Are they at the starting point? Or they not started? And over to you. What's your thoughts?
Sorry, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Zahar, for your questions. Okay. If we talk about the universities, university has all those kind of if you talk about research, zero trust in Malaysia is fairly a new things. Okay, meaning that in university itself, maybe they started like 5-6 years ago. All right. What I can say that the awareness is not there yet. Even is not subscribing to the zero trust yet, but they are like if you talk about the maturity level, maybe it's in the beginning, because every time we want to access, like CP Wong said, single sign on, maybe on the kind of the data that have a similar the access or the security level is low, something like that, like maybe students email, or maybe they are what we call that timetable or something like that. But if they want to access their financial record, or maybe they want to access their the medical record, of course they have to sign in. Single sign on, from the academic papers, there is not compliance with the zero trust, but this is more like on the legacy or traditional network. So what I can say, that you have to, what we call that, in the zero trust, you have the micro segmentation. Okay, you have on the higher level framework, you can do all this in the general one, but on the low level, you have to classify the data. Like university, they have like research, like valuable research data, or maybe IP, they have to protect. And on the academic level, if you want to access certain record, you can just go to the general things. But if you want to dig in deeper, you have to be you must classify that things, and then each maybe you have a different request level. So that is on the higher education or in academic.
All right. What about Abbas? If I can ask you this question, is do you have in your mind kind of a maturity model? And if you look at it, because you don't operate in Malaysia, you look at Australia, for example, where do you think organizations in Australia are at this point of time?
Okay, I would give a very I would play the devil's advocate role in this case. So every organization today is on a zero trust journey, if you know it or you don't know it. And I'll tell you why. 100% of the world today working from home. You cannot debate that, right? Because of pandemic, they are being asked to work from home. And company wants them to be productive. They can't shut down their business. At the same time, IT and security folks, they want to make sure that the data which has been accessed by the employee working from home or the network they're accessing, they are in line with the security requirement. So they have started all those digital transformation projects. As you know, Satya Nadella has said in one of the keynote that 2 years of digital transformation, we saw it in 2 months because of pandemic. So every company has taken some sort of approach for moving their resources from on-prem to cloud, moving their applications from on the cloud so they can be accessed. They are allowing VPN users. They are increasing the security on the identity by making sure they have a second factor authentication. So, Dr. Zahar, every company is in a zero trust journey. Only thing now they have to start mapping that, hey, I have done two-factor authentication for my employees so they can work from home. Which of the domain of zero trust am I ticking in? Yes, you have ticked in the identity portion of zero trust because multi-factor authentication is a part of identity security, and you have done the very good job of the very first step in zero trust. Now let's focus on endpoint. Have you done a good EDR solution on your endpoint so you can mitigate all the threats which are from the cloud? Yes, I have ticked one more area in my zero trust journey on the device. Let's look at from the network or the remote connection point of view or SASE point of view. That's where our partners like FORTINET comes into play. Am I allowing those area by creating that software-defined networks and everything? Yes, I have done that. So in short, there are three kinds of company. One is traditional, one is a little bit of modern, and third is an optimum level. Traditional are those who don't have anything, no single sign-on, no multi-factor authentication, running a flat network. And little bit modern are those, they have some basic stuff, they're already doing it, but they are not aware it. Only thing they have to start mapping it. And the optimum are, they have a lot of automation already built in. If my device at home get ransomware, automatically I can see those alerts in my cloud native SIM. I automatically run the playbook and runbook using AI and ML algorithms, and I'm mitigating the threats within seconds and minutes. So, those three levels, but everyone is on the journey, Dr. Zahar.
Right. Okay. Got it. So you talk about, Australia maybe between traditional to advanced. Yeah. So maybe CP, from your perspective, you had this traditional, advanced, and then optimal. Where do you think the Malaysian organizations in general are, and where do you think they should be in this near term, given that they are challenged with all this cybersecurity challenges as well as workplace challenges? Go ahead, CP. You are on mute now. You must have a grandson too, right, in the background.
Forgot to unmute myself. But actually, I'm in the office today. What you mentioned just now is very interesting because you talk about chatbots. For a good many years, right? I can say probably in the region itself, Southeast Asia, sometimes people are still looking at security as a checkbox. I got to have this, I got to have this. But what really are you doing out of all these things? At times I feel that it is still true. Not all organizations, but maybe the smaller ones. People are having this. Okay, I have this, but they have not gone through this. They're just starting in some sense this journey about zero trust. Like I mentioned earlier, right? It's zero trust. It's and Dr. Saaidal, you also mentioned it is not a technology. It is not a product. It is a framework, I would say. Right. So maybe people already have part of it, not all, and they just don't call it zero trust. Right. But
it sounds like you're politely saying we are like still closer to traditional.
I mentioned authentication and who's on the network, what's on your network, continuous micro segmentations and all that things, right? So I I have this feeling that majority would have an authentication part, but not all would have multi-factor, right? But when it comes to what's on the network, the device portion, the posture check, very few, my personal take. And micro-segmentation is even fewer, because you need to have the first two to understand who and what before you act on it. Yeah. So the early days, but that's why we are here, right? To educate and to make sure that everybody is, well, in a way, I like to say, a rising tide raise all ships.
So I think what I'm hearing is that as we move into this new era, I think we need to start this zero trust journey, right? Whether we like it or not. Otherwise, you will not be able to actually, deal with the kind of realities, right? Both from the user perspective and from the threat perspective, right? And there was this concept which I think Dr. Saaidal, you mentioned about, micro segmentation, right? This is about trying to maybe split up, applications into their own kind of, shell, and then you have protected specifically for that area. Now, to me, this is quite complex, right? I mean, if you think about trying to do your data center to be like that, it's going to be a challenge. But then in this cloud first world, that's different, right? So maybe you want to maybe explain a bit about, how would they move towards this micro advantages in more clearer way, and how can they bring this journey to this complex policies they have today towards a more structured way of actually dealing with things like microsegmentation. Maybe Dr. Saaidal, since you brought this up, maybe you can explain that further. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, as I mentioned before, on the high,
you are also on mute. Your grandson.
Sorry, so he's left. Mr. Abbas, Mr. Abbas doesn't have mute yet. Yeah, yes, his microphone. Okay. As I mentioned before, on the higher level framework, the general one, maybe zero trust is well defined. But on the organizations level, I mean, they have their own risk they want to access. Which data is most critical? Let's say in the university environment, maybe like research data is very. I mean, research data, because universities now they are doing research they are doing research with the industry as well, and some on the pre-commercialization, and they also even doing research for government. So this data is very valuable. So this is the data that we want to access. Okay, which data is most critical, and who should have access to this particular data, and what processes should be considered normal, which should not. So this is all the micro-segmented micro. So this is implementation is actually a unique, okay, based on mission goals and environment. So it's a continuing process, and you can never it will never be done, because from year to year you want to maybe there's a slightly changes on the data and stuff. Maybe what less important before is now very important. So you have to do that. I mean, you have to. It's a it's a continuing process, updating and improving. So this is on the application level. Of course, network as well. So microsegmented. This is where the microsegmentation is unique to the organizations. Okay, those like big company, they have maybe they are more like the privilege level is more difficult. On the university side, maybe certain things like research data, IP, is like a very you have to protect that, something like that. And of course, the in the university as well, you have a data like student or staff records, and then maybe some financial data. So this is what the micro-segmentation that I talk about. It is very tedious, and you have to always done out, and it is good to be automated. Process is good to be automated. So I hope that answers your questions.
Yes, it does. And maybe Abbas, you can talk about this, automation and dealing with this complexity. Would cloud actually play an important role in microsegmentation, for example, right? Over to you, Abbas.
Yeah, absolutely. Cloud does help, because on cloud, once you're moving from on-premises to cloud, there is no firewall. Now everything is on the cloud, and it's been managed through either conditional access engine, which we talked about, or managing through identity. So your identity becomes a key parameter. You are protecting all your infrastructure, all your assets, all your data based on identity security. Now, identity, it could be defined as multiple things. Identity could be of your user, identity could be of your or application, or your location, or your device. But everything is towards the identity. And as you know, in Zero Trust, it's about 6 different pillars. It's not only about the identity, it's not only about the device, it's about the identity, it's about the device, the application, the network, and the infrastructure. They all have to be catered. And Dr. Saaidal was talking about micro-segmentation, part of the network. Single sign-on MFA, part of your identity. These are some of the examples. Having a good EDR and everything is a part of your device. But what about the threat intelligence? Monitoring part, that plays a very crucial role. Any of your 6 domain identity device network are being targeted, you need to have that kind of a visibility, and that you need to create. From that visibility, you create the automation part of it for remediating those threats. Those things are required. So it's a journey. I don't say it's a sprint, a marathon. It takes a couple of years to go into that journey.
So CP, we have another two more minutes. Maybe if you can just say, how would all of us out here start this journey, and how we reach that nirvana or the optimal level? Maybe you can just in 2 minutes, share your
nirvana would be good. Well, actually, in jest, right? I mean, just now we was talking about Abbas mentioning the checklist. It's how human thinks, right? I think end of the day, security is still, we go back to the old adage of process, people, technology. We can have all the technologies there. We started off with the checklist. But then, hey, if you've got that, doesn't matter. Then put it into some kind of framework, some kind of process to understand it. That probably is the best way to start, right? Understand the whole thing, understand where your risk is from, and then work on it. Right? It's a marathon, maybe decathlon. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I think again, thank you very much to all of you. I think what I like to just conclude here, I think, I did see, sponsored Microsoft did a survey in 2018 where about, is Malaysian companies ready for digital transformation? And we found that we are a bit behind compared to the other countries in APAC. And one of the major reasons why people are not embarking on this digital transformation journey is actually cybersecurity. The concern, because you have to rely on this kind of technologies like cloud, the apps, whatever it is. They don't know how to deal with this complexity, right? So I think today, I think for those of you who are not familiar with Zero Trust, look at Zero Trust, because this is the way that the industry is going from a cybersecurity standpoint, and the challenges that we face today, right? And how digital technologies like cloud and so on will help you to actually be more secure rather than less secure if you do it. You understand this methodology or the strategy of Zero Trust. So with that, I would like to thank all of you. I thought it was a very, very interesting panel session. CP from FORTINET, Abbas from Microsoft, and Dr. Saaidal. Very hard to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. From Malaya. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And I will hand it over back to the organizers. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Nice meeting you all.
Cheers.
Yes, keep safe.